There is only one solution to our economic problems. We must implement massive tariffs to ensure our companies can compete fairly. These tariffs will vary based on the country and the amount of manufacturing inequality. We do not need open trade. We need fair trade. Open trade is destroying our economy. If we do not implement massive tariffs, our economy is doomed and we will never recover. We are losing millions of jobs every year due to unfair trade. But the problem is much worse than this. 15 to 20% of all products manufactured in China are fakes. The Chinese have whole factories and even whole towns dedicated to manufacturing fakes. They are making fakes of almost every product you can imagine, and we are losing trillions of dollars every year. The Chinese will do anything to become the greatest economic power in the world. The Chinese are spending billions of dollars a year to lobby members in Congress. These billions are also funneled into campaigns or to bribe officials and regulators. I am amazed at how many Americans are unaware that we allow foreign companies and foreign governments to lobby in Washington or to make donations to their campaigns through direct or indirect means. Washington is flooded with tens of billions of dollars every year from American companies, foreign companies, multinational companies, and foreign governments. These groups are not donating this money because they believe in democracy. They are using it to buy the votes which have led to our economic destruction. Our politicians have become so corrupted by this money, they are no longer concerned with what is in the best interest of our nation. Once the new depression starts, our $9 trillion economy will collapse very quickly and will probably bottom out somewhere in the range of $5 to $7 trillion a year. Remember, we are borrowing $5 trillion a year to make our $9 trillion economy appear to be a $14 trillion economy. The collapse will cause a large devaluation of the dollar, and this will set off a whole cascade of events. The first major event will be that the world will stop loaning us money. This is because as the dollar devaluates, any money loaned to us also devaluates, and no one in their right mind would loan us money under these conditions. As the dollar drops, we are going to see massive inflation because we import almost every product we consume, and this also includes oil. Government tax revenue is going to drop dramatically. Even if the U.S. government dropped the military budget to zero and eliminated all discretionary programs, they will still not have enough tax revenue to pay for the schools, Social Security, Medicare, and similar type programs. The U.S. government will be forced to crank up their printing presses and print trillions of dollars in funny money to meet its financial commitments. This will lead to even more inflation and a further devaluation of the dollar, which will then lead to another round of inflation. For Americans who still have jobs after the collapse, most will be forced to reduce their spending by 50% or more due to massive inflation. This depression will be worse than the 1929 depression because most Americans have a mortgage which consumes more than 50% of their disposable income. How many Americans will be able to pay their mortgage under these conditions? How many will be forced onto the streets or will have to live out of their car? We are going to see millions of people living in the streets and waiting in long food lines. It will be a very vicious cycle between inflation, job losses, consumers defaulting on payments, businesses failing, and the government being forced to print funny money to make ends meet. We will be forced to dramatically reduce the military budget, school budgets, and so on. For those still holding jobs, their salaries will lag significantly behind inflation. The government will not have the money to raise Social Security and Medicare benefits, and they will basically become worthless with massive inflation. 99% of all retirement accounts, mutual funds, and 401ks will be wiped out by the massive inflation. This is not to say everyone is going to lose their job. Unemployment might be 30%, 40%, or even as high as 50%. For those still working, most will become the working poor, and many are going to lose their homes. But even in a depression, many companies will continue to make large profits, and many individuals will still have high-paying jobs. But for most Americans, this is not going to be the case. Let's discuss some of the corruption which has led to the collapse of our economy and housing markets. If you look at the mortgage crisis, it did not occur because of bad business decisions. It was greed and corruption in a majority of the cases. The most common scam involves someone getting a $450,000 loan on a house which was only worth $300,000. The loan agents, The appraisers and the banks were all in on the fraud. The loan agent would get an appraiser to appraise the house at $500,000, even though they knew it was only worth $300,000. The appraiser, the loan agent, and the bank did not care about the fraud because they profited from it, and they were not left holding the note when it defaulted. The banks would then bundle these fraudulent loans and sold them to investors around the world. The individuals partaking in these scams knew they would not be prosecuted because of what happened during the S&L crisis in the late 1980s. We should be prosecuting and locking up the hundreds of thousands of individuals who partook in the various financial scams. A lot of our economic problems are due to the lobbyists and individuals in key government positions. Government officials are no longer picked based on their experience or abilities. They are picked based on the donations they make to the campaigns and parties, who they know, party affiliation, and so on. They receive bribes and kickbacks while in office, and when they finally leave government service, they are offered million-dollar jobs where they can continue the process on the outside using all their government connections. There are more than 60,000 lobbyists in Washington, and the true number is probably greater than 100,000. These lobbyists spend billions of dollars per year to wine, dine, fly, and entertain the Congress, party members, and their families and friends. Most of the donations to the parties and their candidates come from special interest groups, foreign and domestic corporations, and foreign governments. These groups control the policies and laws of our government today. Campaign reform has been a failure. They are full of loopholes, and the amount of money flowing into Washington is still increasing every year. We have a system where you have to pay to play, and this excludes the average American citizen. We need to ban all lobbying immediately if we ever wish to end the massive corruption and have a government which is going to represent its citizens. We have no one to blame but ourselves. It is our responsibility as citizens to keep our government in check, and we have failed miserably. It is time to stand up and put a stop to it. We need to make drastic and sweeping changes to repair the massive damage. If we elect a Democratic or Republican Party member to the White House, we will see hand-wringing, finger-pointing, and inaction. Both parties are full of incompetent individuals at best. Senator Obama and Senator McCain have conducted standard partisan campaigns during the last 2 years. They have proven they have no insight and have no plans to deal with the critical issues facing us today. They spend most of their time attacking each other, making jokes, and spewing the standard rhetoric like, "I will improve the economy, I will lower middle American taxes, and I am proud to be an American." This is not a plan for America. This is a plan to fool you into electing them. We need a leader who has specific plans to return prosperity, safety, and happiness back to our great nation.